This week, the Canadian House Trade Committee discussing the 2026 USMCA review. Host of Real Ag Radio, Sean Haney, joins us now for more on this. So, Sean, what's expected to come out of this committee meeting? What are you thinking?
Hey, great to be with you here this morning. So I was talking to the Shadow Minister for Agriculture, John Barlow, for Real Ag Radio today, and I asked him after we had our discussion about what can we expect, and he actually said not a lot. He's one of the people that is testifying at the committee here today, and really talking about the value of the USMCA and why it is so important for the Canadian agricultural sector. There's also going to be testifying from the auto sector as well. Some of the unions, I believe, are also on the docket. I think this is all a part of the process of Canada getting itself in line, looking at it from a Team Canada approach, and trying to figure out what actually is in store for this review of the USMCA, or CUSMA agreement that is referred to in Canada, that happens July 1st of 2026.
I was going to ask you about that. Listen, often when we talk about parties getting involved in a trade agreement, that exists, that stays, that remains, unless a party does want to withdraw. So this really, the USMCA, really kind of an exception to this. So the overall feeling for Canada regarding potential review, their thoughts and what they're thinking as far as why we're looking at this and maybe the ripple effects to changes.
Yeah, I think the committee is just doing, this is an important topic, and so it's being discussed. It's not like, I wouldn't say there's much debate in Canada in terms of, is this trade deal valuable to the Canadian economy? I think if somebody's arguing that it's not valuable to Canada, I think you need to question some of the work that they're doing as an analyst or a researcher. This is a very important agreement to the Canadian economy. There's a lot of support in Canada for it. Now, is there support for some tweaks to it? Now, that's entirely possible. The auto sector is very much going to have a say in it, and there's probably more of a fear here that the U.S. is going to say, hey, we want to reopen the negotiation on this. I would say that's more of the sentiment, or a lot of the feeling in Canada is that there's a fear that the U.S. is not going to want to proceed as is. Too early to tell, as all three countries are going to have potentially, we'll have an election. There potentially could be new leadership in the three countries. So it's pretty early yet, but it's still important to talk about the subject that's so critical.
Absolutely. Of course, Sean, last week, you understand you had the trilateral trade meeting. Is that factoring in at all into what's happening right now?
Oh, I'm sure that when we had the trade leaders from Canada, Mexico, and the U.S. get together in Phoenix, Arizona last week, I read the communiques from each of the parties, and a lot of similar things were obviously mentioned from the three leaders. And all of the topics are the same, right? If you follow it, and doing the pre-work. Now, this is one of the things that's different in the USMCA, is that they're supposed to be having these annual get-togethers like they had last week to talk about some of the grievances, talk about some of the things that can be improved. And it's kind of that legwork up into the review that's going to happen, or the date, I guess the deadline date of July 1st, 26. So important meeting last week. Dairy still mentioned by USTR Catherine Tai. Forced labor products, definitely an issue the U.S. has been pushing Canada on pretty hard. Mexican corn, of course, also brought up. Like, there's no new things coming up. These are all things being recycled, but they do need to be worked on.
Thank you, Sean. As always, host of Real Ag Radio, that is our good friend Sean Haney. This Real Ag Radio update is brought to you by Economics. You can go to nutrient-economics.com for the latest crop nutrition research and information. And catch Sean on Real Ag Radio, 4:30 p.m. weekdays on World Radio Channel 147. That's on Sirius XM. Love having him and his entire team join us here on the Market Day Report.